175 featuring Aaron Kagan, Financial Literacy and Bitcoin.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to the One Perspective to Another podcast. I am your humble, sometimes gracious, sometimes irritable, sometimes still a little sick host, A. Sanders, here with another episode. This is episode 174 of the One Perspective to Another podcast. And I am back, as I told you, with a guest. And without further ado, I'm just going to let him do his own intro this time, since he's a returning guest. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, ADOT, for bringing me back on from episode 150. I had such a good time recording that one with you. I thought it would be a good idea to try and get back on here and maybe share another perspective of mine. And that has to do with the need for financial literacy throughout our United States and our world in general. That's my perspective. One of the things that you said in episode 172 that really resonated with me is you got to find your passion or your niche. And that's what I feel I've found over the last 5 years of studying about finance. And I actually have 2 business degrees from UH at Manoa. But now I feel like over the last 5 years, I've gotten more education than I got in my whole college career. So I felt like it would be a good opportunity to kind of share the need for financial literacy with your listeners. And thank you for bringing me back on. But this is my niche and this is my passion. Education and helping people understand the corruption of money. I wanted to mention at the top real quick, I'm not a certified financial advisor. I don't intend on giving any financial advice with anything we say in this podcast, even though we might talk about money. My name is Aaron Kagan, AARONKAGAN. You can find me on X at iGrowOrganics. But the best way to get in contact with me, because I can't actually use my hands, would be to message me on Facebook Messenger, and then I would contact you back. We got into why I can't use my hands back in episode 150. So if anyone is curious about that, just scroll that, listen to.
Yeah, we'll put that your 150 episode in the show notes too. So we'll put all your stuff in the show notes. Excuse me.
Nice. So first, I wanted to right off the top mention my influences. They were just so very important to me, and actually I heard about them on a podcast. So it was because I heard about their name on a podcast, I decided to dive into their rabbit hole and learn and educate myself over the last 3-4 years, over COVID, everything. So these influences, first, my top influence is Robert Breedlove with the What is Money podcast. It's an incredible podcast that I encourage everyone who's interested in finance to listen to. My next influence is George from Cryptos R Us on YouTube. He does daily streams that are just so educational and really resonated with me over years. My next influencers are Marty Bench and Matt Odell from the Rabbit Hole Recap podcast. and they are extremely high signal, very educational, very informative. I'd just like to mention David Bennett with the Bitcoin and podcast and the Circle P. They've also given me a lot of information and knowledge that I'm very grateful for. So I encourage everyone to subscribe to everyone's podcast and YouTube.
Nice. We appreciate the disclaimer for this upcoming conversation. You got me a little scared now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a friend of mine. I felt like we could have a really, really cool conversation. We didn't need to rehearse anything. We just flow with it. You know what I mean? I've known you for more than 5 years, and let's get into it. Let's start where you said in episode 172, you said that it is important for someone to find their passion or their niche, and that is what I've found in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has given me so much openness and the ability to learn about our actual financial system and our monetary system. That is the first step into digging into this rabbit hole. And the influencers that I mentioned earlier will help you do just that.
So let me ask you a quick question then. Do you feel like Bitcoin made you kind of reverse engineer your understanding of money, or did it go like the other way around?
Well, like I said, I was in business school. I had one understanding of money. It was an indoctrinated understanding, which we all have. We are all indoctrinated into using the US dollar as our regular currency to trade with every day. And, you don't even understand that it's just such a Ponzi scheme and modern day slavery of a system until you understand Bitcoin.
What do you mean by that? Why do you have to understand Bitcoin to understand the Ponzi scheme?
Because you're able to see the differences between a currency like Bitcoin, which is worldwide. It's not controlled by a single entity or government, such as the US dollar, which is controlled by our Federal Reserve Bank and their money printer, which can be turned on at will whenever they need. Our national debt currently is at $34 trillion. And if you look on a dollar bill, it says this bill is a note of the nation's debt. That's what it represents. Part of the $34 trillion that the government is currently in debt. And by trading US dollars and working to earn US dollars, we're only perpetuating this system of stealing from the poor and giving to the rich, who are the people that are closest to the money printer.
But or you could tell me if I'm wrong, you the master of it. But my understanding of it is we are a consumer-based country, and we are taxed. So when it comes to the power of the dollar, yes, it is the United States of America's debt. But in actuality, like, who's really paying that debt? And will that debt ever be cashed in or, like, given back? No, I don't think so. And then when it comes to, like, spending the dollar, it's only in America. You know what I'm saying? So, like, with the interest rates now, like, we're the Federal Reserve, I know it's a link on there, too. I forgot what it is, but, like, they show daily how much money with, quantitative
easing or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, and they get
Right
rid
now,
of billions
the
of dollars a day. So it's like it's defeating the purpose. But why do you think? My thing is, I'm trying to understand, like, why only Bitcoin? Or are you just saying any crypto?
No, Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the only crypto that is globally recognized, and it perfectly emulates the 5 properties of money. If you'd like to find out about the 5 properties of money: durability, portability,
Recognizability, divisibility, and scarcity.
durability, portability. This is by Robert Breedlove on the What is Money podcast. And scarcity. Bitcoin perfectly represents all the properties of money, whereas gold represents certain properties of it, and the US dollar represents very few properties of it. But Bitcoin, it represents it perfectly. It is like pharmaceutical gold, in other words.
Yeah, but the dollar is only backed by gold, or I don't even know if it's backed by gold anymore.
Not since 1971.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why they created the reserve system, to give that probability back, right? Or I don't know. I'm asking you.
So the banking system currently, as of 1971, works on a fractional reserve banking system. And that is the biggest part of the whole Ponzi scheme. That's basically what the entire Ponzi scheme is based on: the fractional reserve banking. And this is something that is not apparent to regular people unless you really dive into the rabbit hole of banking and really learn and educate yourself about it.
Well, let's dive into it. Break it down.
Okay, well, basically the government says we need $6 trillion to send to Ukraine or Israel or something. What are they going to do? They press the money printer and they print out the $6 trillion, which will add to that $33 trillion in debt, which is represented by the dollars that we all trade every day. So they're basically inflating the supply of these dollars by printing money, and there's no work being put into it. You know, they're not like giving value to the money they're printing. They're just printing paper money, in a sense. It's actually just zeros and ones on a spreadsheet, but by printing money, they're inflating the supply of US dollars. $33 trillion in debt plus $6 trillion is $38 trillion or whatever. And that represents the value
That was a
of
mistake.
the paper US dollar that we all are indoctrinated to use in everyday life. And now, actually, the entire world uses the US dollar for the most part in trade. Even though now some countries are kind of pulling off of that, that's not a good thing for the government, but it's simply the free market at work. And Bitcoin is part of the free market. People can freely choose. They can trade in the US dollar, which is tied to this $34 trillion debt bill that we're paying $1 billion in interest payments every month to the treasury bill holders that are holding all of this debt. So every month, that debt number, 33, 34 trillion, is going up by $1 trillion every month, just because we can't stop printing money. We just can't. We have too many expenses as a government, and we just basically spend money that we don't have just because we have a money printer.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on certain points, but my understanding of it is when they ask, excuse me, when they ask for $6 trillion, like I think you talked about it. You said that $6 trillion or 6 billion, whichever one you said, is going to be 6 trillion is going to be with interest, and that's what's going on right now. That's why it's so. Like you say, if you're not looking for the information, then you won't know. But they haven't printed any money for a while. That's why interest rates are so high. That's why credit cards or APRs are so high. That's why groceries, gas, everything is more expensive because they're trying to stop people from spending to take down interest rates for it to get better. But then on the same notion, like, I don't think the debt is as important. It's important. But I don't think the government, not the federal government, but the government has any plans to rectify or cash that check to pay it. It's just a system of what can get this next regime of president through the next 8 years. They don't care how much inflation happens. They don't care how much more they add to the debt. It's like today, not today, yeah, literally today, they signed a bill where the government doesn't have to shut down. So they kept, what's her name, Nancy Pelosi's bill, or like not stimulus, they kept her, whatever the fuck it's called, national, thing to keep it. So it's like, I hear what you're saying, but there's never a goal for them to get rid of that debt that we owe to other people. It's just in America.
It's going to go to our future generations. It's going to go to our kids, our grandkids. Eventually, shit is going to hit the fan. We're paying $1 trillion in new interest payments to current treasury holders, whether they be Chinese holders, Japanese holders, European holders, people all around the world, whoever owns treasury bills, they're getting paid interest payments from our government. Where do those interest payments come from? The money printer.
Are you sure?
Yes. There's no other way. There's no other way other than taxation. Taxation or inflation.
These are two different ways of the government making money.
Yeah, but taxation, and that's not a money printer. That's them collecting interest payments on inflated value of $1.
That's one way of government revenue.
That's two different things, though, right? No? Am I wrong? Tell me. You the master.
Well, inflation is taxation. It's taxation, like I was telling you, it's taxation of the poor, giving that to the rich who are closer to the money printer at the top echelon.
Or break that down to me, though. But like everybody
big companies,
pays taxes. So why do you say it's
the industrial complex, pharmaceutical companies?
Unwarranted inflation is adding to the money supply. So it's stealing from the savers of dollars. If a person saves in US dollars and 6 trillion new US dollars are added to the money supply, doesn't that devalue the person who has the you understand?
Yeah, but that's not them making money less hard. They're not making it taxable. They're making money easier to get versus making it harder to get, which is just credit and borrowing to create interest. That's the way my mind sees it. I don't think that's taking away from the poor. If you're richer, you have more assets to counterbalance being taxed. but it's not taking away, because everybody pays taxes. Everybody has credit. Not everybody has credit, but like everybody is in the system of like, if I get a credit card and I have a limit of $100,000 versus getting it now versus like what 5 years ago, the APR is going to be different. Anybody can have that credit card. It's just the way I see it is just the way that the American government is trying to keep checks and balances from it getting out of hand. Because I hear what you're saying, and I thought that same thing too, of like, it's going to be a shit show. But like, then thinking about the government aspect of it, they don't have any intentions of paying off that trillions of dollars of debt. They just want to keep maintaining. That's their goal.
But they're paying $1 trillion a month in interest payments. Don't you feel 2 years down the line that $1 trillion is going to be 2 trillion, 3 trillion? That's our kids. That's our kids' going to have to pay. When that $34 trillion in debt becomes 100 trillion, I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and that we're in the middle of it. Like, if we had this conversation like 10 years ago when we were kids, it would be the same thing. Every single year, the national debt has increased. Like, that's just an inevitable. My thing is, like, whatever it takes for them to maintain, they will do it again. They will raise interest rates again. I don't think, though, the government will allow, even if it gets to $50 trillion, there's no way they're going to allow the dollar to collapse. It's just, that's why I say they don't care about the debt. They'd rather pay, like, I hear what you're saying on the money aspect of it and the Bitcoin, but the pettiness of the government, they would rather pay those trillions
than have bigger guns.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is the US government has the biggest gun, and that's why they don't need to worry about paying their debt. But the fact is, we're paying these treasury holders every month on this debt, and that's not going to stop. I mean, it's not like we're going to pay off the principal of the debt, you know. So I don't know how it's going to work, but what I do know is Bitcoin is an opt-out. It's an opt-out of this monetary system, Ponzi scheme of modern day slavery that does steal from the poor. Because if you had $300 or $400 in your bank account, say, and the value of that $300 or $400 goes down to where you can only buy like 3 gallons of milk with it, like, that's how they steal from the poor and give to the rich, through inflation, pumping money into this money supply, and that leads to this inflation. The Federal Reserve is claiming, we have to raise interest rates to curb inflation, quote unquote. It's not really, I mean, it did do somewhat of what they wanted, but like, inflation is coming down, but like, it's not the whole story. And that's actually the only tool that they have in their arsenal to utilize. They can't do anything else except throw their arms up in the air. What I said by Bitcoin being an opt-out is Bitcoin's not controlled by any Federal Reserve, any centralized entity. It is freedom money, controlled by the people, run by the people, and valued by the people. That's why Bitcoin has value, because the people put value to it. And, okay, a whole nother thing that I wanted to discuss, other than the subject of money in general, is this is a very special week in Bitcoin history. It's never been happened before, never been allowed. The creation of a
In
Bitcoin
America.
spot ETF was approved by the SEC. That's never been done before. 15 years of the history of Bitcoin, and now it is here. And what this spot Bitcoin ETF is, it's simply an instrument for anybody to easily get exposure to Bitcoin. So the regular way someone would purchase Bitcoin would be go to an exchange and maybe leave it on the exchange, but the best thing to do for Bitcoin is to self-custody. But what these ETFs allow people to do is easily get Bitcoin without worrying about the custody. These ETFs control the custody. And they also add fees. So they're making fees when people buy their ETFs. So it's on top of the value of Bitcoin. They're paying more fees in order for them to have the custody. So in my opinion, it's better to have self-custody. Be your own bank, be your own boss. Don't rely and pay fees yearly to these companies just to hold your Bitcoin. But these ETFs, what they are is an instrument for people to easily get exposure to it. And that is historical. We haven't seen the exact effect of it on the Bitcoin price, but
No, it went up a little bit.
in the first, well, not as of this morning, in the first 4 days of trading of these spot Bitcoin ETFs, $11 billion worth of Bitcoin has flown in. Well, it's volume, so it's actually flown in and out, because out of the 11 ETFs that were approved, 10 of them are brand new, so they have mostly inflows of money. The one Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was converted to an ETF, so they have all these insiders that have had their Bitcoin locked into this trust for 10 years. Now, because it's converted to an ETF, these people are able to sell and able to cash out. So that's what they've done. They've seen a tremendous amount of outflow from the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which has the highest fees out of all of the ETFs. And they did that on purpose because they knew they weren't trying to sell their shares like these 10 other new ETFs. They knew that there was going to be a lot of people trying to take profits and cash out. So the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, it's mostly outflows, but all the other ETFs, they've more than matched the outflows with inflows.
Okay.
It's a matter of time before this scarce asset, very scarce. It's just a matter of time before these ETFs fill up, the over-the-counter market dries up, and there's no Bitcoin that these guys can buy.
But or go ahead.
That is what's going to make the price explode at some point.
But I hear everything you're saying, but when I think about it in terms of you trying to take away the US dollar, like, one, Bitcoin has a limit. It has a cap. There is a maxed version of total Bitcoin that you can have. Two,
yeah, and that's definitely a benefit rather than a negative.
But it's that, to me, in the American economy, that would be terrible.
Well, we've never ever had an invention in our existence that is able to be this, a finite counted supply asset. We've never invented anything of this sort. No asset has been able to be digitally counted, so every little aspect of the asset is known. It's never been in the history of humanity.
Yeah, that's all well and dandy. I totally agree with you. I think it's a beautiful thing. I love technology for those reasons. But then I think about the other side of it too, is like, because I was going to ask, where are these people taking this money from Bitcoin and doing with it? They're transferring it out and getting what? Dollar bills, right?
Some.
I'm not sure what you're asking or referring to.
Like you said, when you get an ETF for the people who had it, you said people cashed out when Bitcoin's volume went up. They cashed out their money to get dollars, USD, right?
Well, okay. So you're referring to the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust that was just approved to be converted into an ETF.
Yeah.
That's the only one. There are 10 others that are brand new. They're new companies that have created their ETFs. But this Grayscale Bitcoin Trust has had people in it for 10 years, putting Bitcoin in it constantly. And now that it's converted to an ETF, they're able to sell it. They have not been able to sell their holdings before. But that's what has affected the Bitcoin price. Because the sellers of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust had to sell their Bitcoin in order to sell shares of their trust.
Okay, I'm just thinking like actually trying to replace a dollar. The only thing that I get to like as an end-all be-all is the Federal Reserve being able to create and take back and delete money when they want to is way more powerful than having a cap of 21 million Bitcoin. Because let's say, for example, Bitcoin took over dollar bill. How would you buy that Bitcoin? The everyday average American with dollars. So the rich would stay rich. The poor would stay poor.
Exactly what you're referring to is the fact that every asset every asset that we can buy is denominated in US dollar, which you're right, yeah. And I don't see Bitcoin replacing the US dollar. I see more of a side-by-side relationship and a free market. People are free to make their own decisions. Bitcoin is simply harder, better money than fake fiat paper money.
Oh, so you're just saying like instead of like us, if we were going to like London or something and using the pound, like you could still use your credit card in a foreign country. You're just saying like to use Bitcoin as another means to do shit. But still, you still don't have dollars, but you just gonna be more Bitcoin based.
Look at El Salvador. They made Bitcoin legal currency, legal tender, and they still use US dollars. It's not like it's totally replaced, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought you meant like you wanted to completely, because you said it was a Ponzi scheme, so I'm like, you trying to get rid of the dollar.
It is, and I don't want to be a part of the Ponzi scheme. I see it for what it is, and that's what education allows you to do. When you start delving into what the banking system is, what fractional reserve banking is, what the gold standard was, why we got pulled off of the gold standard, it opens so many doors and rabbit holes that you just want to learn more and more and more. And the resources that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the podcast are invaluable resources.
Got you. So let me pick your brain then. So let's say more ETFs happen, yada, yada, yada. What happens when the federal government decides they want their piece too?
Okay, so with the ETFs, the government is getting their piece. The ETFs are approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I'm sure there's something that they are getting their piece. I mean, they're not a regulated security, not giving the government a piece, you know? Any stock out there is a security, and the government gets a piece off of everything, I'm sure.
Nah, you talking about it the by the books way. I'm talking about when the government and people who work in government are yada yada yada. People who only make $80,000 a year but got $400,000 of stocks. Like, where do you get that money from? I'm talking about those people who want to invest in the Bitcoin. I feel like Bitcoin is a beautiful thing for people who think in the right mind. But if Bitcoin did get that much more progressive, I feel like the federal government would feel like it's an attack and they would try to take it over.
Yeah, but you know, what do they say? First they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then they give up because there's nothing to do. And that's what's happening right now. We're at the then they fight you stage, and we just have to persevere through it, and Bitcoin will win. So you just gotta stay humble and stack sats.
You said stack stats?
Stack sats. Satoshis. That's the smallest denomination of Bitcoin.
So what's the goal? Like, do you want the government to get more so they can get rid of the debt? Or you just want more people to invest in the Bitcoin and be more flexible?
My goal with education and coming on your podcast and talking to people about money in general is just getting the idea that financial literacy is crucially important, and there are nowhere near the amount of people that are financially literate that should be. And Bitcoin, it allowed me to become financially literate. I went to college, I got 2 business degrees. I was not financially literate when I graduated. Because of Bitcoin, I now feel financially literate.
But what do you say to the people who still trust the dollar, and for the people who just don't care enough to become financially stable, not financially stable, financially literate? Like, some people are fine just getting taxed and not getting assets. Like, what would you say to those people then?
I mean, if you're okay being a sheep as a person, then that's fine. That's, you know, what do they say? Obliviousness is,
ignorance is best friend or something like that?
Yeah, there we go. Ignorance is bliss or something. But in reality, if you look at the reality of the situation and life itself, I mean, it's not. You don't not want to know stuff, you know? You want to know everything you can.
But AK, it's people who do not. Period. Like, you do know that, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, I was just listening to Robert Breedlove this morning. He was saying there's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the people listening to a podcast or some form of educational information 80% of those people won't care. But the 20% of people, they will really take it into account, and it'll change their lives. And they'll get immense value out of hearing my words. And that's what my goal is. Those 20% people that take this and really learn about Bitcoin and the monetary system and the faults and the Ponzi-ness, and the fact that old men are just running our economic system.
So for
Jerome Powell, he's the Federal Reserve, the head of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, he does nothing but just has a meeting every couple months. But for the 20% people, like, what would you give them as an action plan, like going towards literacy and like Bitcoin, like a little, like a 1 or 2 month little powwow about it? Like, what actions?
I would say go to episode 1 of the What is Money podcast. That is like the best starting point I could think of. Robert Breedlove is incredibly ingenious, and he's such a grounded philosopher.
Sounds good. So, or another question: are you completely out of the dollar? Like, even like
I don't hold dollars. No.
Do you invest in dollar systems? Do you invest in anything that's
no?
So no stocks, no nothing.
No. Nope.
Real estate?
No real estate. Nope.
All crypto.
Yeah, my father actually is still on the real estate bandwagon, but he has to understand that whole market is about to hit the fan, in a sense.
So do you foresee, like, let's say, for example, Bitcoin does do X, Y, and Z, they meet X, Y, and Z goal by 2 or 3 years. Do you see Bitcoin being re-regulated in any kind of way?
Well, okay, because the new ETFs were just approved last week, that is government regulation. That is, even though the SEC says we don't endorse Bitcoin, now it's part of a regulated product. It's part of a regulated government issued product. So there's nothing, I mean, what more could we ask for, you know? There's no more government regulation that we could ask for, you know? I mean, the thing they could say is, oh, self-custody is banned and something, I don't know. But you can't do that because the Bitcoin network is worldwide. There are miners all around the world. There are nodes maintaining the network all around the world. So there's no one world government. The United States can't just say, oh, Bitcoin is bad, we're shutting it down. China tried that. It didn't work very well. It only made Bitcoin more decentralized because they banned mining and all the miners moved to all different places all around the world. So if they wanted to, they couldn't stop Bitcoin. Only they could shape it into a box that they can control, which is what the ETF is. It's an instrument for them
to get their fees.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yep. It's paper Bitcoin.
So you're not saying get rid of the dollar. You're just saying you want Bitcoin to be hand in hand with the dollar.
Well, it's a free market. People have the freedom to choose. Do you want crappy, fake paper money or real hard, digital by code, consensus money that is recognizable by millions and millions and millions of people? Or the fake fiat money, you know?
Yeah.
It's a free market. It's a free market. People could go buy yen if they wanted to. They could go buy euros. But, you know, what a person chooses, like me personally, I would make the best, in my opinion, the best choice for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But like you said, it's a free market, so.
Yeah. So you look at what options are available. They're all fiat options because every currency is a fiat money, which is fake by decree. That's what fiat means. Bitcoin is the only real hard, sound money that is recognizable by everyone. Everyone that holds Bitcoin values Bitcoin as, I mean,
money, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a currency, yeah, money as a currency.
So we got that down pat. My next thing in my mind of financial literacy would be, how do you make profit off of it?
Okay, Bitcoin, like I said, it's an invention that's never been available before in our entire humanity. It's simply an invention. It is, the invention of Bitcoin is the greatest savings technology that has ever been invented. Because it is a fixed supply asset, it's not going to depreciate, it's going to appreciate over time. Like the US dollar has lost buying power over time. We can agree on that. You can look at many, many different charts. The US dollar has lost buying power. Bitcoin gains buying power over time. And that's because of the halving events, reducing the amount that is being inflated. Because Bitcoin has inflation, but it's planned and it's in the code and everybody knows of it. It's not like Jerome Powell all of a sudden decides, oh, let's raise interest rates by 75 basis points. You can't do that with Bitcoin. But because of the Bitcoin halving every 4 years, the next one is in about 3 months. The supply of new Bitcoin gets cut in half. So any savvy business person knows less supply and more demand, what will that do to the price?
Drive out poor people?
Well, by poor people, you mean weak hands. People that cannot hold this asset. So that's what you mean by poor people. Someone can be poor and have a little Bitcoin and never sell it and continue to be poor. In 20 years, they'll be rich. And that's because it's in the Bitcoin code. The halvings occur every 4 years, and that makes it more and more scarce. So that homeless person that has $100 in Bitcoin now, in 20 years, that'll be 5 halving events or 5 cycles. It's like almost, there's not enough Bitcoin to go around, basically. There's going to be more demand for this invention that at the push of a button, lets anybody send value from any place in the world to another place in the world in 10 minutes with no middlemen. I mean,
Excuse me.
that alone is invaluable.
So what happens if another coin gets an ETF?
Well, they're in talks for Ethereum spot ETFs. They're being talked about also XRP and Solana, but nothing's been approved. Only Bitcoin, but it does look like the Ethereum ETF could potentially be approved this year. And if it does, that would affect the supply of Ethereum, which is actually a deflationary coin now after their merge.
So, what will be the end all be all? You gotta wait 20 years to be rich?
No, in Bitcoin, it's basically a cycle. A cycle is the 4-year halving cycle. So there's going to be a low point in the cycle, and then there's going to be a blow off top in the cycle. Like I said, the halving is in about 3 months, and usually it takes about 6 months after the halving to have the parabolic rise.
And how incremental is that?
Thousands of percent. In the past, it's been thousands of percent.
So give me an example. The happening is happening in a couple months. Bitcoin is at like what, 40 something right now?
40,000 right now.
So what would it be in after the happening in 6 months?
Okay, see, it's hard to decipher the exact price, but you look at the fixed supply asset, the fact that the inflation rate is going to be cut in half from 6.25 to 3.15 per block. With these ETFs being approved, it's going to allow people easy access to Bitcoin. So you think about that, it's a fixed supply asset with the inflation rate getting cut in half soon, and billions and billions of dollars of new inflows coming in. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to make some economical equations and know that the price is going to be affected.
And when that happens, or go ahead.
I don't want to say an exact number because I don't know, and everybody is just guessing. But I know I'm very confident it will be higher than it is now.
So that's just holding Bitcoin is the way to increase Bitcoin, is what you're saying.
Yes. Holding Bitcoin is the way to do it, basically. Over time, you're going to see, you don't need to trade. You don't need to trade and do all that funky stuff with leverage and all that. That's all garbage. You just buy Bitcoin, you hold Bitcoin in self-custody, and then you use it when you need it.
So you wouldn't, or go ahead.
It's simple.
Just like that, huh?
Yeah, buy and hold.
So what my thing is like for those 80% of people, how would you buy something that you put all your money into, but you still gotta live your everyday life?
Well, that's for a person to make their own decision and how they want to live their life.
So Bitcoin, you're saying, isn't for the person who's lighting the pockets.
It can be. You can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. Any amount. It's broken down into satoshis. Like I said, every Bitcoin is 100 million satoshis.
So that's what I'm trying to ask. I know that you don't want to do this ain't financial advice shit, but just if you were a regular ass person and you're on the tier of being damn near poor or close to something, you make $30,000 a year. How much of your paycheck are you putting into Bitcoin? Like if it's real financial literacy, it's breaking down your assets. You have an American job. You get paid in United States dollars. How much are you allocating, saving, rent, gas, food? Well, like, how much are you putting towards Bitcoin?
Right. Okay. So what you're referring to is a Bitcoin strategy called dollar cost averaging. And that's putting in a certain amount of money at a certain point in time, consistently.
Yeah.
That one of your big terms.
Consistency is key. Yeah, you damn right.
You consistently dollar cost average. No matter what the price of Bitcoin is, you'll still get some satoshis in your wallet. So over time, those satoshis stack up. Maybe one day you'll have 100 million. And if you do, you'll have a Bitcoin. So that's what dollar cost averaging does. It'll eventually get you to 100 million, and that is one Bitcoin.
Would you like relate that to like if somebody wanted to like use that instead of like a Roth account or something? Would you think that would be the same kind of investment? Is it worth it?
Okay, so a Roth account is a retirement account you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
There is a company that can convert a person's Roth or 401k into Bitcoin assets, and they don't take a tax hit or anything. That's unchained.com.
Really?
They can take your Roth and convert it into Bitcoin assets where you hold your own keys. So it's a really cool retirement plan that they made available.
See, why you holding out on this financial literacy? We gotta drop at least one jewel for the people, man. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's a website. It's it's a company. It's still a centralized company, but they're really Bitcoin oriented. They're really freedom tech oriented, and in my opinion, they're a good company.
Nice. So the end all be all is just you got to get your own information and make your own choices. Is what I feel that you're saying.
Yeah, and use self-custody. Don't rely on third parties, and be your own controller. Don't be controlled by the governments or the Federal Reserve Bank.
I feel it. I feel like this is something that we're gonna have to check back in after the whatever.
After the halving,
yeah,
let's do it. So, if anybody wants to easily buy Bitcoin, they just download the Square Cash app, and it's just like pushing a button instantly. And it's right there, and you can withdraw it to your self-custody wallet. Trust Wallet is a really good app. You
Matt
write
Odell's
down
not
your
gonna
seed
like that.
words, then you are in control of your own money. You are your own bank.
I feel that.
So you don't rely on any centralized entity, any exchange or anything. You have full control.
Is that the only one that you can use? Can you use Coinbase or anything like that, or no?
It's the one I personally
Coinbase
use.
is an exchange. They also have a self-custody wallet, but I don't like that particular wallet because they're doing something with NFTs and not allowing them to be sent out or something.
Okay.
So
Well,
I
say
don't
the one that
use
you like
Coinbase
again
wallet,
one more time.
But trust is the best.
Not the best,
That's
just the one best
Yeah,
that I
the best
use.
self-custody free app that you can just download. Right.
Samurai is also really good.
That you're in full control of. Nobody can take anything away from you.
Unless you lose that password.
Well, the seed phrase, yeah. Don't lose the seed phrase.
Those words are the most important thing.
Keep that in like a safe or something.
Yeah. Any last words before we let you get out of here?
Well, Bitcoin is freedom money. It is the one tool we have to opt out of the government control of our monetary system. And I just hope more and more people get educated and they learn, utilize these influencers that I mentioned earlier, learn more about it and how to not be a slave to our financial system. You work hard at your job, put some of that money into hard money, just $100 a paycheck. Buy Bitcoin using the Square Cash app, and boom, you have an instant savings account that will put your kids through college.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
Thank you for letting me come on again, Aaron. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And again, my name is Aaron Kagan, AARON, KAGAN. Best way to get me is find me on Facebook Messenger, send me a message, I'll get right back to you with your number.
Or X.
You heard it here first. That is Aaron Kagan. And this has been another episode of One Perspective to Another podcast, talking about financial literacy, a little bit of crypto, a little bit of everything. As always, make sure you tell 2 friends to tell 2 friends, and we are out.
Playing OPTA
Alexa, pause. Alexa, what is the price of 1 Bitcoin?
Good morning, Aaron. 1 Bitcoin is worth $49,130, down 1.3% over the last 24 hours.
Pretty good after a week. That's funny. Well, I wanted to say thank you to Aaron Sanders. This was a lot of fun, and it gave me an outlet to express my opinions and hopefully help some people along the way. That's basically why I did this, to give the everyday person a perspective into the people that are standing to profit off of Bitcoin. Thank you all for listening, and there might be more in the future. Subscribe to the One Perspective to Another podcast. That's on any podcast platform or player. Thank you all and have a great day. Hello. Hello.
So he's threatening to
Okay,
sell
can
the
you press the button?